Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today. This is Drawing Studio with Jesse Payne. Today we're going to talk about the properties of light and shadow, something we call chiaroscuro. Once you understand these properties and how to execute them through various media, you can convincingly create the illusion of three-dimensionality on a two-dimensional surface. So chiaroscuro, let's walk through it. What is it? Well, when it's demonstrated on something as simple as a sphere, such as this, it's relatively easy to see. So the basics of it are that when you have a singular light source, such as the sun, projecting onto a round or curved object, that artists discovered that it had certain characteristics once that happens. So chiaroscuro, what is it? And how can we understand how to execute this and these properties of light and shadow? Well, when it's demonstrated on something as simple as a sphere, it's relatively easy to see. Light travels in straight lines, rays of light. And so once they reflect and start refracting off of different things in nature, this singular light source will show a certain pattern of light. Typically, you will see an area where it's what we call a core highlight, and then a highlighted area of the sphere. And you'll start to understand that then, instead of just through drawing, for example, gradating a light into a dark on one side of the object, which is the kind of common beginner's mistake when they go to render, you'll start to see that these highlights melt into something we call a core shadow. This is a strip of darker dark within the shadow. And then you'll notice that on the far edge, you'll see this glowing light, something we call reflected light. This is caused due to the light traveling past the sphere and bouncing back off of objects in the distance and back this way, or light traveling past the sphere and bouncing back up off the surface that it's sitting on. So you'll also notice that the cast shadow itself has some kind of behaviors and characteristics to it that we'd like to follow. First, the cast shadows are always darkest nearest the object, and they get lighter as they move away. And then their shadows, the shadow itself is always sharper nearest the object and gets lighter as it moves away. So if you follow these kind of characteristics, if you identify a nice core highlight in the highlight area of the form, move that into shadow, core shadow, reflected light, and then a cast shadow that's nice and crisp and dark nearest the object and gets lighter as it moves away, sharper, and gets blurrier as it moves away, you'll begin to create this nice illusion. And what's amazing about this is that you can then go about drawing anything you want from your imagination and create this convincing illusion of volume, mass, and three-dimensionality. Some artists that have used chiaroscuro, Da Vinci, some will say that he's the one that really discovered these properties and started to use them. And you can see that even in something like drapery, you can begin to see the light source, which is in the upper left, start to hit these forms, and core shadows start to move through these folds as they come over the top, and then you see reflected light glows underneath each one. Even on something that's really small, you see this highlight, and then this core shadow, and then this little reflected light, because he understood that as the light hit this and moved past to this one, that it reflected some of that light back on the other one. And you can see these properties repeat at every single fold throughout this drawing. And so you could almost draw drapery from your imagination if you started to understand the way it moved and the way it folded and everything, and put a convincing illusion of light on it. Rembrandt, of course, used light very well. He used texture to kind of enhance the form in his paintings, understanding that where light hit was going to capture the most sense of the tactile surface that he was portraying. So you'll see here, light travels past, cast shadow of the nose, and a nice, really beautiful reflected light on the other side of the face. Now, I often tell people as well that if once you have embedded this understanding and knowledge into your execution and understanding, that this is exactly how Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks artists work from imagination. It's how they create convincing illusion of lights inside their software, 3ds Max and whichever ones they might be using. You see here the light coming in the window, scraping across Mike in this really nice core shadow that begins to travel through, and even that little blue reflected light in here and all the way down through here is bouncing off of Soli. So these artists and these designers that are working on these projects, they understand these core principles of chiaroscuro as well. And they have to execute them really well to be able to create this illusion convincingly on something that's not real, such as these characters. And so you can see here that it's demonstrated by a light source shooting straight lines or rays of light down at the object. And you can even identify where the boundaries of the cast shadow would be without actually having a sphere in front of you. So for example, if you're drawing an egg, you could draw the egg shape, choose in your mind where you want the light to be, and then create this convincing illusion of the egg sitting on a surface. This is an example of the light source being moved behind and portraying coming forward. And then this is one with it, at the same level of the sphere, shooting from the side. And then how it would appear as if it was moving back a bit. If it was light source was kind of more near to you than the sphere itself. So again, in a drawing, we see this highlight moving into shadow, a strip of core shadow, reflected light, and then a nice cast shadow with a really nice execution of a crisp dark underneath it, a little bit sharper edge, and then getting blurrier as it moves beyond. Here is a drawing that my teaching assistant, Edgy, made, which is really nice. Here she identifies the light source, the highlight, the midtone, core shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow. And I'm going to provide for you a little step-by-step here, and I hope to be able to execute this for you and make future videos doing this with the actual media so you can see how the media needs to be handled. So first things first, we tone the paper down. Get a nice gray. Get rid of that white. This enables you to work in a more reductive or painterly fashion where you're erasing out your highlights, using your erasers as drawing tools, and then using your pencils to push further back in the darks that you maybe needed beyond that mid-tone gray. So here we start with an outline. I just want to note here that this is an outline that is way darker than what you should start with. But for the sake of this video and for you to be able to see, we made it a little bit darker than what we needed to. Also, when the paper's toned down, it's realistic that you could use your pen eraser to make this circle as well. We don't want outlines like you see here around the object at the end because those outlines, those contour lines tend to flatten the objects and just completely destroy the illusion of three-dimensionality. And so it's kind of a fight, from the beginning to work against these outlines if you do them too dark or you really focus on them too much. And one thing that's really nice about the white, the pen eraser being used to make it, is that you can just take a dirty paper towel or something with charcoal and rub it right away. So you can see here that Edgy really focused on getting the highlights pulled out first, putting that dark core shadow kind of back in. And again, she's just applying the media in such a way that she can smear it and manipulate it and move it around with a blending stump as she needs to. It's a messy project and it's a messy way of working, but charcoal is often daunting to students because it is so messy and drawings tend to look bad before they look good. And so it's a challenge. So now you can see that Edge is pushing a value back here into the background. This is interesting because now we have this edge popped forward. Now the highlight seems brighter than what it was before because we've placed a dark next to it. And now we're starting to pay attention to the space around the sphere, which is equally as important as the sphere itself. Another oversight usually by beginners. So now that this dark is placed around, we really start to have the sphere pop forward, that illusion that it's coming off the page a bit more. And you see that the core shadow is nice and soft. The reflected lights are in there. You see that the outline is nearly invisible now. We have things called figure ground reversals happening where the background in one spot is lighter than the sphere itself. And then right here, like a little ribbon might twist, you see that the background is now darker and the sphere itself is lighter. So right here, where there's that twist of that reaction and in that relationship between the figure and the ground, the sphere in the background, is called a figure ground reversal, and it's a really interesting trick to pull off. We're magicians, guys, and I think we just have to learn how to manipulate media to create the illusion of three-dimensionality, and it's really all just sleight of hand. And once you learn these tricks, I think you can start making really interesting drawings, even out of your imagination, that create this illusion. So that's that, guys. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to making future videos, and please let me know what type of video you'd like for me to make. I'm happy to do anything that you guys feel you have the need for, and I hope to demonstrate media here in the near future as well, and demonstrate the ways in which you use graphite versus charcoal versus colored pencils and so forth. I look forward. Thank you again for joining.